Scott Summers, leader, model student, lover of sunglasses. He's an all-round good guy, right? Having led teams of mutants to victory all across the world and looking super stylish while he does it. He's been a poster boy for comics, films and games for years, but with such a lot of exposure, there's been a fair few bits of information about the One-Eyed Wonder which have slipped under the radar. With this in mind, I'm Jules, your Southwest Savage for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 things you didn't know about Cyclops. Number 10. His powers are broken. So one of the things that people assume about Cyclops is that his powers are uncontrollable, but this isn't the case. As revealed in his origin story, Scott and his brother Alex survived a plane crash but lost their parents. During their escape, Scott suffered a severe concussion upon landing, and this is the reason why his optic blasts are permanently set to the very, totally on setting. If he hadn't suffered this brain injury, then he'd be in complete control of his powers, and this is even highlighted when Rogue stole his powers and was able to flick the switch between normal and crazy eyes. Number 9. He can't burn things. Another common misconception about Cyclops is that his eye blasts have heating properties. This is probably because they are most similar, at least visually, to Superman's heat or laser vision. But you know what? Superman can absolutely do one in this case, as Scott's powers are much more odd. It turns out that his eyes are actually portals that allow red energy to fly through. There's even been other explanations as to why it could be. Maybe it's the result of his body harvesting sunlight, or maybe it's just his body expressing energy in general. The accounts of what they are have been mixed, to say the least. Bottom line is, though, if you get hit by this blast, you don't need to worry about singeing your leotard. You just need to worry about, dying. So at least that's some bonus, right? You're very welcome. Number 8. He might have a thing for Wolverine. The relationship between Scott, Jean Grey and their teammate Wolverine is the most famous love triangle in the Marvel series. Cyclops and Wolverine have been bitter rivals since the latter was introduced, both within the team and for the affections of Jean. Although the pair have grown to be fast friends in the intervening years, the rivalry has remained, and they've competed over pretty much everything. This has led many to read into this air quotes friendship as being unresolved attraction between the two, and things are complicated when Wolverine's female clone X-23 entered the scene and Scott then tried to enter her. We're not suggesting they're in love with each other, but the pairing of Wolverine and Cyclops is certainly interesting to say the least. Number 7. Everything looks yellow to him, not red. So Cyclops' visor is a pretty mean piece of tech. It not only keeps his eyes under control, but also has cool little features like a touchpad to allow him to increase or decrease the power of his beams, as well as reflective panels which can amplify the blast even further. But what you might not know is that the visor changes Cyclops' vision. Because the visor and the glasses that he wears the rest of the time are made of a substance called ruby quartz, most readers assume that everything he sees is tinted red. Indeed, scenes in the animated adaptations usually follow this logic, presenting his sight as though somebody was holding a piece of red cellophane in front of the camera. However, Grant Morrison's new X-Men number 131 revealed that the ruby quartz actually tinges the light yellow, not red. Not really a game changer, but still, a nice little bit of information for you there. Number 6. He's married to the clone of his dead girlfriend. Most people know that Jean Grey is the love of Scott's life. Fewer people remember that Scott actually married Jean's clone Madelyne Pryor after her first death. The resurrection of Jean a few years later led to Cyclops reuniting with Jean, but at the cost of his marriage. But don't you worry about any sticky love triangle between the three, as Marvel just said, nah, actually Madelyne's evil, let's kill her off. Like all ex-wives, am I right? Which significantly helped things. Number 5. He's a time traveler. In the comic books, Cyclops appears to be in his late 30s or early 40s. However, various time travel shenanigans mean that he's actually much older. When his infant son Cable was infected with a techno-organic virus by the villain Apocalypse, Scott and Jean decided that it would be better for them to raise him in the distant future where it was safer. Although how a devastated wasteland is safer than modern-day America is anyone's guess, but they did it anyway. So now, following this logic, Scott and Jean were the same age when they returned to the present, leaving the teenage Nathaniel in the future where he became one of the era's greatest heroes. When he returned, Cable had already reached adulthood and now appears to be significantly older than his father. Weird. Number 4. He's immune to Havok's powers. Like many mutant siblings, Scott and his brother Alex have been proven to be immune to each other's powers. In fact, in some cases, exposure to Cyclops' optic blasts actually make Havok stronger as he absorbs the energy and uses it himself. Thus, whenever the pair fight, they tend to resort to physical confrontations, as neither has ever been able to use his powers to harm the other. Number 3. The Summer Brothers Mystery. One of the longest-running mysteries in the X-Men series was the possibility of the third Summers brother. Mr. Sinister let slip that Scott might have another brother besides Alex in 1993, but the truth wasn't revealed until 13 years later with the introduction of the villainous Vulcan. The third Summers brother theory is actually a popular source of debate amongst fans to this day, especially as Mr. Sinister never specified that there were only 3 brothers, and it's possible that there are several more that are unaccounted for. Number 2. He actually survived Last Stand. Filming for X-Men Last Stand was thrown into chaos when James Marsden, who portrayed Cyclops in the first 3 X-Men films, left in order to work on Superman Returns. As a result, his character had to be written out of the script early and had a much smaller role than originally intended. However, director Brett Ratner chose not to show Cyclops' corpse so that he could potentially return in a later movie. Although everyone assumes that he was dead, the fact that there was no body meant that he could have survived in some form. And number 1, he was meant to retire. Writer Chris Claremont originally intended for Jean and Scott to leave the Xavier Institute and start a family of their own, which would tie into the original plan of the X-Men having a rotating cast as the older students left and newer ones joined. However, a few years later, Jean Grey returned from the dead and everything went out the window. Scott and Madelyne split up, he went back to Jean and rejoined the X-Men. This began a trend that continues to this day, where almost all of the X-Men's original cast have left the books only briefly. Today, most of the characters who were once students at the school have now become teachers, and only very minor members of the team have left permanently. And that's our list. Got any more Cyclops moments which we glazed over? Oh, that was bad. Well, let me know about them in the comments section below. And why not swing by whatculture.com for more news and articles like this every goddamn day. As always, I've been Jules, and you can follow us here on Twitter or me personally at RetroJ with a 0, and I will speak to you soon.